Hey, this is Joe from Home Studio Corner. We're going to shake things up today. You don't normally see me with a bass guitar in my hands, much less a tiny short scale bass like this. This is an Ibanez Sound Gear Micro. So I had a couple years ago, someone gave me a gift card to Guitar Center, and I walked in and I just wanted like just a throwaway bass to just have fun with because I don't have one. And I got this, and it's small, which as a guitar player, it feels like I'm playing guitar. And it actually has a surprisingly useful sound, but out of the box, there's some tweaks I need to do to get it to where I feel better when I just sit to play it. Like I don't record with it almost ever, but for playing, tweaking this, being an audio engineer allows me to tweak the sound a little bit, and it's a much more pleasant experience. And I think I play better because of it. So let's talk about that. First of all, so here is what the bass sounds like just plugged in. Here we go. Okay, sounds like a bass, but it definitely it's much more mid-rangey than I would want. I want some thump to it. It doesn't have a whole lot of thump. It's kind of pokey. I'm actually going to play a couple of harmonics here that really emphasize that mid-range buildup that's there. That to me feels like it's too much, and it's overshadowing the low. There's low frequencies there, but the mid-range is overshadowing those, if that makes sense. So I'm going to hit a note. Just listen to it. Just kind of do a little listening test, a little ear training. Listen to the plain note, and listen for what the mid-range is doing. The low note is bow. It's a low A, but there's some other mid-range stuff that's there. Okay, I'm going to play the note by itself, then I'm going to play those harmonics that are coming through, and I think it's super interesting. Okay, here we go. So you hear that. Now, I don't know if that's true of all basses, and this is a short scale, so even those pinch harmonic things are going to be different. But when you hear this, the predominant thing that I hear is more those sounds than the low, right? To me, that's really interesting, and those are the things I want to pull down a little bit, and I want to emphasize the lower end so that it feels more like a bass. Right now, it feels like a low guitar. I mean, it feels like a bass, but the sound coming out is a lot wimpier than I want. So, what we see here in front of you, this is called Universal Control. So you can't quite see it on camera, but in front of me, I've got a Studio Live mixer, which is a digital mixer, and that's feeding straight to you in the video. However, the mixer has a couple of plugins on it. These are the same ones in Studio One. If you use the Fat Channel plugin, it's that same plugin here. And I'm just going to use the Vintage EQ equalizer and the FET comp compressor to demonstrate this. So as you can see, this is the channel that I'm playing on. So this is just a remote control for the mixer, okay? So what you hear me adjusting here is actually being adjusted on the mixer. That doesn't really matter, but in case you're wondering what this software is. So you'll notice here, if I zoom in, two things. One, you can change the order of the way these plugins go. So I'm actually gonna, before I compress, because I'm not happy with the sound, I'm gonna EQ first. And we can swap those by clicking this button. That means EQ is coming first in the signal path, then it's gonna compress. Because the compression is just gonna emphasize all that mid-range. It's gonna be baked into the signal even more. I wanna take care of that and shape the tone a little bit more, then go into the compressor, and I've got good reasons for the compressor as well. Okay, so you can see here, if I zoom in, here's the EQ curve that I've come up with, and it's just these two bottom knobs, but you see I've cranked up the low end at 60 hertz and below, because this is a shelf, and then I've done a big cut at 700 hertz. So it's about 7 dB both ways. Here's what the 60 hertz sounds like. I'm just going to crank it as I play an A. Here we go. Okay, and then here is that 700 hertz. I'm going to crank that now. That's that frequency, that kind of that mid-range frequency. It's right around 700 or so, which I don't use a lot, but here that was absolutely the frequency. So listen to what happens when I cut it. That to me is fascinating. So I was doing this on actually an outboard EQ that I have here, a channel strip that has a 4-band EQ on it. But I wanted to show you, plugged it into the board and did this, and it has the same effect. I'm boosting the low end at like 60, 50 hertz to give it some weight on the bottom end, and then getting rid of that. Not getting rid of it, but just toning it down, saying, hey, you're being selfish. Sit down so that we can hear the rest of the frequencies. And now we go, let me turn it off, and then I'll turn it back on. And it goes from being wimpy and mid-rangey to like, oh, hey, that's kind of a cool bass sound. It's not like it fundamentally changed how this bass sounds. A wonderful, jazz bass, P bass, something like that would be delightful. I don't have one. I'm really just doing this to goof around, but I enjoy playing to this more than I enjoy playing to this. That one just goes, it's very it's like it's got a cold. I don't want it to have a cold. I want it to have some girth to it. Okay, so the second problem I run into when I play bass is I'm not super consistent. And I tend to, when I'm trying to keep time, I tend to slap the strings a little bit. Not like straight up like Seinfeld necessarily, but like just tapping it to kind of keep the rhythm. So let me play it for you, but what you'll hear is those taps, because I'm not good at it, they jump out a whole lot, and it's obnoxious. So we can see the spike in the meter there, it's just way louder. I'm gonna have to go back and fix that if I record this. Now the perfect solution would be to play it better, to learn how to do that without making those pops. I'm not trying to be a great bass player, I'm just trying to have fun, and this isn't fun. What I hear right now isn't fun for me. So how we're gonna make it fun is by using compression. Now you've seen these 1,000 times, this FET compressor, but I've got it set up slower on the attack time, slow for this compressor, pretty quick on the release, and then I've got it where it's not doing a ton of gain reduction. It's just hitting those, like if I mute it for a second, you'll see it. It's just going, when I smack it, you can see it's going down there. But everything else I do, depending on what I play, gets less and less treatment. So if I play the higher strings, it doesn't compress much, if at all. But when I play the lower stuff that has more energy, or when I hit it, it's a fast compressor, so it grabs it really quickly. And this allows me to play a little more aggressively, and it's going to even out those really big spikes that I was playing before, so I can play them without kind of ruining the bass part. Here's what that sounds like. Right? And it's not like it's an overly compressed sound. I mean, it's compressed, but it's mostly doing the spiky stuff. This setup is how I set up my bass tone whenever I want to sit here and play, or I'm writing songs and just trying to come up with new stuff on the bass. This allows me to play more aggressively, which I feel better. And also when I play softer, it's got this warmth to it because I don't have to play the bass so hard to get a sound. The compressor's kind of keeping it in a certain range, so I can play it softer, and it feels a lot better, especially on the higher strings. If you're not a bass player, the takeaway here is how the sound coming out of your recording system, how it sounds, matters. I talk a lot about getting it right at the source, and obviously that means bass, guitar, amp choice, whatever. But it also means if the bass sounds like the before in this scenario, it's just not as fun for me to play. So I might still play a cool part, and you can do all this EQ and compression afterward, but I'm going to play differently based on what I'm hearing. That's why I don't record a dry guitar and then use an amp modeler later. I dial in a cool amp tone at the beginning, and then when I'm playing, I'm really excited because it's sounding like I want it to sound. Bass players, especially if you got someone who doesn't bring a rig in, or someone who doesn't play bass a lot and they want a cool tone, dial in something like this for them to listen to while they record. Figure out how to make that happen. You can do this with plugins inside your DAW if you monitor everything through your software. But find a way to get it to sound good, thick, full, have some compression on there. And if you set it up the right way, you may not even have to worry about it committing to the audio and printing that effect if you want to go back and tweak it later. But even if you do, I'm okay with that as well, because it's part of the learning process is let's get it sounding good and let's run that to tape. That would be really cool. All right, that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching. If you want more recording tips from me, head over to check out my recording cheat sheet. It's for free at recordingcheatsheet.com. That's a mouthful, but you'll get there. See ya.